Well, yes, it's us and James for our third week. Hopefully you're appreciating the journey that we've been taking a little bit. Some of you probably already have read James, and so you have some sense of who he is. Others of you, this might be brand new, and so that's kind of exciting as well. But it's been a fun journey. We've got this Sunday and one more Sunday, I believe, that we'll be on it. So just to remind ourselves, this is a letter that James writes. He's an apostle. He's also the brother of Jesus. And this is a letter to help us to understand his understanding of faith. And obviously, he is a person of note, this James being the brother of Jesus, but also he is the leader of the church in Jerusalem, which many of us would consider to be kind of ground zero for all of the faith, not just the Christian faith, but the Jewish faith as well, and ultimately as well the Islam faith. So an important post that this guy carries. Plus, we're learning he likes action, right? James likes action. We've got to have faith. We've got to have faith in grace, but then it's got to lead to some action, or what's the point? And so that's part of why I picked this theme. Hope is a verb. Believe it or not, I picked this theme a couple of months ago, and I had the election in mind when I picked it. Does that make anybody nervous? Good. Well, somebody's all right, but Nancy and I are just fine. That's right. No, I had the election in mind. We've become such a polarized nation. There are so many topics that we've made toxic for ourselves and that we can't have conversations around them. I was worried, as were others, that this election season was going to be miserable. I have to say, so far I'm feeling okay. It feels like reasonable election season that hasn't been, it's been regular ugly and not extra ugly, which is what we've kind of been recently. And we have to face it too, that we as a church, we kind of have allowed ourselves to become a bit of the battleground for all of the conflicts that are outside in our communities, in our nation. We will often hear about how an opinion ought to influence our faith. This opinion ought to have influence over what we believe. And then we forget to actually live out the faith that we claim to have. Right? Topics get difficult, they get hot, and we forget that we are people of faith. People with respect for all of creation, respect for all of God's children. We forget all of that when we're processing some difficult issues. So James, for me, it's been a pathway to living a faithful life, which amidst conflict, I feel like is absolutely crucial. When we're working through difficult times of significant disagreement, it's all the more important that we are living by our own understandings of faith, that we are living by the godly directions that we believe in. So with that in mind, we talked about our faith leading to actions in this journey. We talked about our words matching our faith. Today we're going to talk about the heart. The heart. You might even ask yourself, you might even realize that we're going to be asking ourselves, well, what's inside of us? We can talk about the importance of our actions. We can talk about the importance of our words. But at some point, what's actually inside of us, in our hearts, it has to matter in some way. And this is where James is in this argument that he has created. And he starts by talking to us about wisdom. Right? Wisdom, but we think we've got some sense of where he's going, wisdom. But then he tells us there are two kinds of wisdom. One type of wisdom leads to bitter envy and selfish ambition. This wisdom does not come from heaven or from God. This is what James would have us know. The other wisdom, it leads to peace-loving, consideration, submission to God, mercy, impartiality, sincerity. All of those good fruits we Christians like to claim, right? That's the other wisdom, or at least the fruit of that other wisdom. This other wisdom, it comes from heaven. It comes from God. And what James is making clear to us is our hearts, our being, has access to both. We are open to both of those things. We can harbor either, and the evidence of which way we have chosen is going to be in the fruit. Not only in our actions, but in how we're feeling inside. So with this point in mind, James, he goes to emphasize, he asks, if you don't believe me, what are your conflicts grounded in? Is it aggression grounded in coveting? Desiring what you don't have? Is that what your conflicts are grounded in? Is that why you are aggressive? Sometimes this argument hits home, this idea that we tend to covet. We tend to desire what we don't have, but it doesn't always work, this argument. We don't really like to think that we covet, or at least we don't covet that much. Or at least, we don't covet as much as that guy or that gal, so I must be doing all right. So that argument sometimes will fall away from us. But I wonder, what if we clarify a little bit more about what James might have been saying when he's talking about coveting? What if he's not talking about stuff? What if he's not even talking about power? What if he's talking about being right? Can we covet righteousness? Can we covet righteousness with aggression? James asks us, do you push towards what you want to the point of conflict? Or do you ask God? Do you seek God's input when you come to that point of conflict? And what would it even mean? I mean, what is James even saying when he asks us to ask God? Is he telling us that God will solve it? All we need to do is offer it to God, and our challenge, our conflict, whatever, it's going to be solved? Because I don't know about you. That has not been my experience with God. I have been in that situation of asking God to help think through a conflict, even to solve the conflict. And that's not generally what leads to a solution. So I wonder, maybe God is inviting us into something else. Maybe James is inviting us to something else when he says, ask God. I think about what the blessings might be of some other approach. For one thing, I think asking God, it kind of opens the top on the me versus you box that we like to put ourselves in. Right? We're in that world of polarization. We want to think dual thinking. It's either this or it's that. It's dark, it's light, it's good, it's bad, it's right, it's wrong. You know, all of those. That was supposed to be a joke. Should I have done it the other way? It's right, it's wrong. The dual thinking, we want to climb into that box so often. And when we get to a point where we're asking God, it seems to me we're taking the lid off of that box just a little bit. Because we are inviting a new presence into the conversation. I mean, just asking for God right off conveys some sort of humility, some sort of lightening of pressure on ourselves and on the situation. We're literally asking for a higher wisdom, something that is beyond us. That in and of itself is a humbling turn. But maybe even more gets done. Maybe even more gets done. I wonder if when we ask God, we might even be opening some sort of pathway to recognizing that the situation, the conflict, might not even be ours to solve. That we aren't being given that to figure out, to change, to make better. When we're asking for God, to a certain extent, we're offering it back to God to say, what do you want to happen, God? Maybe it even takes us to a place where we realize it might not be our role even to convince somebody else. Or at least maybe not convince them right then and there. Maybe not solve it right then and there. Maybe by asking God, we're just giving God some time to do what God do. When James tells us to ask God, I hear an invitation. It's an invitation to create a trusting reliance on God in our hearts. And when we do, we are relieving ourselves of the perceived need to change others, or even to change God. Asking God, to me, it's not about affecting or even changing God. It's about changing us. It's shaping us. It's shaping our hearts so that we, in that affirmed relationship with God, we are ready for whatever the future holds. Because we have reaffirmed that alliance that we have, that connection that we have, that understanding of the balance of power. We've realized exactly what we are actually able to do. I think James he's inviting us to shape what's in our hearts. Which to me takes us back to that original question. What is in our hearts? I mean, knowing your real heart, it can be tough, right? I mean, it's not like we have a heart mirror that we can hold up to our heart and it'll show us exactly what our hearts are doing, what is inside of our hearts. Right? James himself, he talks about mirrors in chapter 1. I don't know if you remember it, but he kind of talks about the superficiality of a mirror. He talks about people who go and they're supposed to be living out their faith, but they go to the mirror, they confirm what they believe, and then they leave and they forget all about what they confirmed they believed, that superficiality. Do you ever think about why you look in the mirror? I think about the times I look in the mirror. I get ready, trying to figure out my life in the mornings. When I go look in the mirror, I'm in there. First I'm checking here to make sure I still got some. It's not all gone, Then we do the turn, at least me anyway. Like, oh my gosh, that Westlake Village Church, putting 10 pounds on me. Ugh. Right? I mean, what do we do when we're looking in that mirror, right? And I realize I'm doing those kinds of things, and I'm realizing I'm not really checking on myself, really. Checking on how I'm doing, really, how my spirit, how my soul is doing. If I were doing that, I'm going to go find someplace sacred to me. Places where I feel like God has been able to speak to me, to inspire me, to enrich me. I'm going to go out, for me, the natural world. I love to walk my dog because I'm out in God's world and can think a little bit. I might be going home to places of comfort, places where I can rest my mind about the other concerns and just be in that spot focus what I want to focus on. Maybe I'll be connecting with others in my life who have held the words of God for me in the past. People who have inspired me, people who have guided me. If I want to know how I'm really doing, that's where I'm going to go. I don't go to the mirror for that. We think we go to the mirror to see what we look like. But is it more truthfully, we go to the mirror to see what we look like to others? We want to know what they're seeing or what they are going to see. God doesn't need a mirror to see me. My friends, my family, they don't really need a mirror to see me. They get enough of me all the time. It's just others that we get worried about, concerned about how we look. We want to look presentable in community. But where is that line between wanting to be presentable in community and wanting to look nice versus wanting to be accepted, wanting to be loved? I know I'm sitting in that spot right now. Carol Ames has been on me. She wants me to take a picture, and she wants me to put it on that pastor wall in the hallway down there. But I'm no dummy. Some of those pictures are over 50 years old. The picture's going to be there a while. So all of a sudden, I'm like, well, how's my hair, and do I look, I'm going through the whole ritual, trying to build up whatever I need to do to build up to get that picture taken. Isn't it interesting how we can give away so much space in our hearts, so much authority about how we feel about ourselves to others, to the outside world around us, not to God, not to those we care about, but to others. It makes me realize that we not only need to worry about what is in our hearts, we also need to be worrying and be mindful of who is in our hearts. Two kinds of wisdom. What's in your heart? Have you heard the tale of the two wolves? Some of you might have. It's an old Native American tale told, at least in this case, by an old Cherokee Indian chief. And he's teaching his grandson about life. And he says, a fight is going on inside me. He told the young boy this. A fight between two wolves. The dark one is evil. He is anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, superiority, and ego. He continues, the light wolf is good. He is joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith. The same fight is going on inside of you, grandson, and inside of every other person on the face of the earth. Two kinds of wisdom. Does that sound familiar to any scripture you might have read just today within about a half hour? Two kinds of wisdom. So the grandson, he ponders for a moment, and then he asks, grandfather, which wolf will win? And the old Cherokee, he smiles and he says, the one you feed. Friends, we have two kinds of wisdom to choose from. Wisdom that will occupy our hearts, occupy our faith. Two wolves within us. Which one will you feed? Amen.